With Passover, it is a story which has truth at the core of it. Sometimes we think of stories, and when we think of stories, we think that stories are make-believe or necessarily fictional. But the most powerful stories are the stories that embody truth, spirituality, life, and they end up really speaking to the core of our being. Have you noticed how with some stories, whether they're written in books or whether they're shot in movies or whether they're presented as documentaries or in other ways, there are some stories that really grip people, and people look at this and go, this is really something powerful. And there's other stories that come along and they're entertaining, and they might be 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes, and we'll take the entertainment value that comes out of it, and sometimes they're done cleverly, but often what ends up happening is in the midst of this, they don't end up having any sort of lasting value. So the thing that is going on with Passover is it is a very basic story. The story is that a people who were welcome have become enslaved. The story is that those who have power believe that might makes right, and that they can do to others whatever they choose to do to them. This is a story of God raising up one man who is inadequate to the task, a man who at one time believed in his power to rescue and redeem, but has gotten to a place where he doesn't have the energy, he doesn't have the stamina, he doesn't have what it takes to do the redemption that his heart so desperately wanted a generation before. And then at this very point in time where he's ready to move into retirement and believes that God is going to choose somebody else to do what was burning in his heart to do, at the point of his inadequacy, at the point where he no longer has strength, power, and vitality like he once did, God encounters him. God shows up, and God rekindles all the dreams that he had at one point in time and says, it is now time to rescue my people, and I'm going to use you. And this man who has been out for a generation, taking care of flocks, taking care of animals, doing mundane, simple things, goes to a point where he says, God, please choose somebody else. I simply don't have what it takes to do what you want to accomplish. I'm not your guy. And in the midst of his being convinced of his own adequacy, he is anointed, set apart, and given what's necessary to do this. And the very fact that he knows that he can't do what God has called him to do ends up being the very thing that God treasures in this person. And so he is sent off to confront the greatest and the most powerful empire of his generation. He is sent off to challenge a real jerk who believes that he is God. He is sent to challenge an economic and a political system. He is sent to challenge those who have military, who have strength, who have ability to trade, who have no end to all the good that they believe that they can do. And his message is simple. The God of the Hebrews says, let my people go. Now, as you can imagine, a man who believes that he is God is not going to be impressed by the God of poor people who are slaves. The God who believes he is the God of the empire believes that the God of the slaves has nothing to say to him. But the disparity of power is simple. The one who is righteous, the one who is pure, the one who cares, and the one who is not an idol has chosen a slave people. But the fact that his people is a slave people does not mean that he does not have the ability to do amazing things. So you have a man who believes that he is a God, who is being confronted by the God who really is the God, but has shown up in less than glorious raiment, glorious fashion, glorious clothing. And the God who shows up and says, I'm the God of this slave people, is disguising himself. Because he's not merely the God of this slave people. He's the God of all creation. He's the God who spoke a word and brought this universe as we know it into being. He is the God who has ruled from eternity past. He is the God who will continue to rule after all the things that we are so attached to have burned up in the fire. So Pharaoh, who believes himself to be God, has not been confronted simply by a territorial demon who is attached to the slave people, but he has been encountered by the one God who made it all, and who is all-powerful, all-present, all-knowledgeable, and is everywhere all at once, and has a plan for redeeming all of human history. This is the conflict that is at the center of human history and the beginning of God's redemption. So people will tell you about God, and some people will tell you about spiritual renewal that they have received. Some people will tell you about the person of Yeshua the Messiah. They will tell you about salvation. They will tell you about personal transformation, and you may end up thinking that the God that they're talking about is their local personal God, and you're glad it worked for them. What if what you think is their local personal God, and a good choice for them, and something that's really made their lives better, what if it's not that? What if what they have encountered is the God who has created it all, the God who has all power, the God who was at the very beginning, the God who spoke it all into being, and the God who has new and wonderful plans for when this present solar system ends up being burned up in the fire, and that there are new and glorious and magnificent plans that go past this? What if the God who is calling you is way more than he's claiming to be in the individual encounter? What if he's made himself smaller than he actually is, so that you can encounter him, you can choose him, only for you to end up coming to a place where you see the amazing glory, power, and presence of who he honestly is? If this is the case, don't be like Pharaoh, who has contempt for God simply because of who he's chosen to associate himself with. Instead, understand that there might be a season and a time of visitation where there's an opportunity for you to end up being redeemed, being renewed, having sin dealt with, having guilt dealt with, which often is very real guilt, okay? It's not like you're not guilty, because all of us are. But all of these things come together because God has approached you on a level that you can understand. Don't be confused, like Pharaoh was, of saying this God is attached to a slave people, so he obviously can't be much of a God. Such is God's love for humanity, that his salvation works and moves through the generations. He approaches people, but he comes in a form where you can accept him or where you can reject him. And as you choose whether you're going to accept or reject him, the truth is very simple. He is not diminished by the people who accept him, nor is he diminished by those who are arrogant and proud and don't think that he has anything to offer. Shalom.